You guys, we're here right now with Miesha Tate, and let's talk, man. Let's talk your new job. Let's talk, all sorts of things that I have on my mind that I've been wanting to ask you for I don't know how long now.
So I've been settled into Singapore now for a little over a week, and I'm really loving it. I've been here like 4 times before, so I kind of knew that this is a place that I could call home.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting furniture delivered. I just got the Wi-Fi set up at our place, so I'm just settling in still, but I'm already excited and I'm chomping at the bit to get started, be more head on with one championship. I think I'm going to be commentating 2 events a month,
Okay.
or every other weekend, however you want to look at it. And there'll be quite a bit of travel involved, even talking about coming back to the States as early as May.
Wow.
Yeah, heading to New York for some conferences and things like that. So busy. I think I'm going to be really, really busy.
Yeah. A quick question, though. How did this all come about?
It's weird, Josh. It really was just a calling, to be honest. I've always had this intuition. And when it speaks, I just listen. And I think I was pregnant with Amaya still. And I just felt like I was meant to be doing something bigger and different than what I was doing. I was feeling kind of bored with the home life. And I've always had that model. I think as a fighter, you kind of have to have the motto that you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I was feeling too comfortable and I just wanted to change. I wanted to challenge myself in a new way. And like I mentioned, I had been out to Singapore a few times before. I had dinner with Chaudhry Sitanyang. And that's the CEO and founder of One Championship and Evolve, for those of you that don't know. And, he wanted to, extend his gym to me, extend, a friendly invitation. And, I decided years later to kind of follow up on that. He kind of left it out there. Like, Miesha, if you ever want to do something here, just let me know. And I said, okay, I kind of just tucked it away in the memory bank. And years and years later, I reached out to Chaudhry and I said, I think I'd like to see if there's some position available at Evolve or One Championship. And he said, yeah, absolutely. We'd love for you to be the vice president of One Championship. And it kind of blew my mind, to be honest. I did not expect that. But then I talked to Johnny and I just said, hey, would you consider moving all the way across the world with me and our daughter? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, no, I'm serious. This is not like a lighthearted question. And he's like, I'm serious too. I still don't think he took me that serious, because finally when I was like, all right, it's like a 6-month plan or whatever. I think a little longer than that now. Maya's 10 months. So I guess it was, along those lines. But anyways, it was pretty quick turnaround for us. And here I'm in Singapore. Johnny has yet to meet us. He's coming in a couple days. And that's how it came about. It was random. It's about as random as me deciding to fight or deciding to wrestle. Mm-hmm. It's complete random decision. But when I say random, I also think that it's meant to be. It's not like it just, fell into my lap. It was a calling.
Yeah. I actually worked for them for a couple years. So I did the K-Side commentary for them for a couple years. And Rich Franklin was working with them. I believe he's still with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Rich and I became close. He actually was like one of the guys that did the rules while the fights were going on. So if we had questions about rules, he would talk to us about it and break it down while I was doing the commentary for it. I mean, honestly, I thought they had some really good shows. The Singapore shows are amazing. The presentation, the walkouts, the pre-prep, all the stuff that goes into it was absolutely amazing. Like I really enjoyed their stuff. And it was right after I had fought Nate. And it was like, right after I fought Benson, I started working for them for a couple years. And it was nice, man. It was good. Obviously it's a long flight when you're flying back and forth. But I was
wondering, so you never lived here then?
No, I never lived there. That was kind of, I think we're headed. They were asking me like, hey, how much longer are you going to fight? Are you, what's the idea? What's the plan? Like, would you be considering it? Would you ever consider maybe moving to Singapore? Because I think what happened with Rich, Rich went out there and he just kind of like made some friends with some people and basically moved out there.
He got absorbed. I remember.
Yes.
I remember him telling me that he was stateside and he was doing the travel back and forth, and it was just too difficult, and finally decided he was supposed to move to Singapore for 2 years, which is my plan also. And he's like, just wait, you're going to be here longer than 2 years.
Yep.
He's like, I'm still here.
Yep. That's exactly what happened. So we just started, and it was so great because every time I went, Matt Hume was there, he was there. But I mean, it felt like home, honestly. Like it felt good to be there and be part of that, especially with those two guys.
Why didn't you end up moving out here? You didn't want to leave the San Jose life?
Yeah, no, I was still fighting at the time. I was really, like, if it was something maybe that was offered to me after fighting, if I had decided I was going to be done. But it was kind of like right after the Ben fight, so I knew if I got one more fight or one more win, I'd probably be fighting for the title again. And then there was some conversation and talk that I had with Victor about like, hey, it's going to be a little bit more hard now for us to have you keep flying back and forth because you still fight for the UFC. And even though I got approval from the UFC, it was really, I could understand why. They don't want somebody who's calling their fights to be fighting for another organization. But I mean, I felt great. I felt happy that they even gave me an opportunity. I mean, I did shows for them for probably about 2 years, and it was nice.
Yeah.
I had a good time. Great group of people that worked there, and I got lucky though because I was actually filming movies in China at the time, and so they would fly me. So sometimes they didn't have to fly from the States; they would fly me from like Beijing or Guangzhou or wherever I was doing movies, and they would fly me from there. So it was only like a 2-hour flight. So it wasn't bad.
I haven't been to China yet. What do you think of China?
I liked it there. I mean, I didn't mind it. Like Beijing was it seemed like it was a little rough around the edges, but like when I was in Guangzhou, there's a lot of industrial area there. But we were out like on the outskirts where the farms were, and people were amazing. It was awesome. I mean, it was a little weird because I was walking through some of the areas and like the kids are pointing at you like they'd never seen a white person before. And so it was a little weird.
It is a little weird here for me being the minority. Like I look around and a lot of times I'm the only white person.
Yeah. But I mean, there's actually a lot of ethnic groups that are like, there's a lot of ethnicity there in Singapore.
That's very true. Yeah. 40% of the population here in Singapore is expats.
Yep.
So there's just a lot of cultural diversity. That doesn't mean it's all white people. There's a lot of people from Indonesia, China, as you mentioned. I mean, a lot of Filipinos.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's definitely got a lot of cultural influence, which I absolutely love. I think of anywhere that I've been in Asia, I haven't been to China, like I said yet, but I still feel like this is the easiest to integrate because there is such a cultural diversity. It's kind of like a mini America, but just better because it's cleaner, and it's people are just so friendly. It's so nice, and it's very earthy, which I'm kind of a hippie at heart. I call myself a modern day hippie.
You don't say.
Yeah, I totally am. Yeah. I'm the person who washes my plastic Ziploc bags and reuses them. So if that doesn't say enough, I've never seen such a big city that integrates nature as well as Singapore, which I just love. Yep. I absolutely love it. I actually have this incredible view right now, which I wanted to share with you and anyone who's watching, because.
Yeah, I ain't mad at that. Is that the Marina Bay Sands? Yeah.
That's the Marina Bay Sands, and over there is the Garden by the Bay.
Yep.
So just tons of greenery out there, and you just see how incorporated the nature is. And I think there are a bunch of hippies over here as well. Let me show you the bay here. That's the ocean over there, the inlet. But I feel like they're a bunch of conservatives and and hippies too, in a sense, because they're all like about saving water and about just taking care of nature, which I'm all about.
Yeah,
So
I do know that they have like a real hard ordinance on vehicles there. It costs like $50,000 just to put your name into like an auction to even get a car, and then when you get a car to have it imported in or something like that, it's really expensive. Like for a Honda, it's gonna run you like $26,000 or something like that.
It's something like 100% or 150% tax on it, which is crazy. So it costs whatever the car costs. It usually costs double that. So it's very unaffordable to have a car here. Most people do not, but the public transportation, as you probably know, it's so easy.
It's the best.
It's like
the best in the world
to go anywhere.
It's the best in the world,
So.
Hands down. I think it's the best in the world. And I mean, like as far as traveling in Europe and all around those areas, by far, I think hands down, Singapore has the best public transportation.
Yeah, we need to step up our game, but everyone owns a car in America, so I guess it's just a different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to. I think it'd be nice if everyone started getting rid of them a little bit and just started biking to work instead. But who knows, man? You never know. So
Yeah, I'm only at point 0.7 miles from Evolve, so I just run there.
that's
I don't
nice.
even. Yeah, it's so nice.
So
Very centrally located, and I've never lived this kind of life. I'm more of a country girl, I would say. I grew up on 5 acres. I did grow up in Tacoma, so I guess it depends how you look at it. But like, oh, that's a city, but I grew up way on the outskirts, which is like more Puyallup area for those of you that are familiar with Washington State. And I grew up on 5 acres, and I played outside, and was definitely a tomboy at heart. So this is a totally different lifestyle for me. I'm in a condo with no yard, and it's like 1,600 square feet, 3 bedrooms. It's small, and I'm really embracing the simplicity of it. I just
yeah,
wanted to simplify and focus on working and trying my new hat on. I'm no longer Miesha the fighter, and I'm Miesha the one championship executive.
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. So let me like rewind it back a little bit. Like you said, you talked to Chaudhry and you said this is more of like something that was a calling. But like, let me get into this. Why was there never a conversation with the UFC about them using you, given that you were in Vegas? I mean, and you're a former champion with them. I just find that kind of weird.
So, it would there wasn't really any job security for me until I had actually already agreed to work with One Championship, but it hadn't been announced yet, which was interesting to me. So I was still basically a freelancer with the UFC,
Yeah.
and they would call me for content. Hey, Miesha, can you come to the office and film a video for for our platforms. And sure, I would come and do that, do picks or whatever that they needed, picks and predictions. But there was never really any job security until, ironically, I had already signed with One Championship, and it wasn't announced yet that I was going to be coming over here. But then the UFC reached out about, possibly giving me more of like a full-time gig.
Yeah.
But even then, that like the pay wasn't comparable, and the opportunity wasn't
Yeah.
as interesting. So I was already committed to coming to One Championship.
That's nice. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Yeah, they had, what is it? They had like National Women's Day, and then I noticed though on the video that they had for the UFC girls pumping the girls up that they took you out. Does that rub you raw a little bit, like in your mind, or is that just the business?
No, it does. It does, because I feel like I was still a big part of the UFC and a big part of the women's movement. So it bothers me. I'm not going to lie, but it bothers me briefly, and then it's gone. It's just like if I think about it for the moment, it kind of irks me. It's kind of like, what the fuck, like why would you not like I wasn't part of it, I'm just gone now.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I critique the UFC sometimes. Like they probably aren't a big fan of that. The fact that I don't enjoy the antics of Conor McGregor or a Ronda Rousey. I was never that way. So I feel like I'm more of a purist and of a martial artist, and I feel like I resonate with One Championship and their motto better than the UFC. And maybe that bothers the UFC, that I've been a little bit outspoken about that, but. I'm definitely not trying to badmouth the UFC. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and there's no way that I would be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for the UFC. So I gotta like pay my respects, but it doesn't mean that I agree with everything that they do, and it doesn't mean that that I have to or that I should. And if that means that they're gonna cut me out of the promos from here on out, and I'm not going to be a part of what I was the part of, then that's okay too, because feel like I'm on to bigger and better things, and I'm really enjoying my position here with One Championship, and I know that One Championship would never do that.
Yeah.
If I was a part of history in the making, like I don't think that just because I went to work for something else that they would just like cut me out of the promos.
Yeah. So let me rewind it back even further than that. Like you're still relatively young. You see some of the fighters that like for me, I fought all the way up until I was 39. Like, why? Why did you retire so early?
I retired because I didn't like the way that I felt that last fight. I felt like I couldn't ignite the fire. And that was a really ugly feeling to me. Just to kind of be in there, but be on autopilot. I didn't feel like it was fair to Raquel. I didn't feel like it was fair to me. I didn't feel like it was fair to my fans, because it was really a shell of the fighter that I am. And that's not how I want to represent myself. That's not how I want my legacy to go down. And it's like, it's a hard thing to explain to maybe people who haven't been there, but like when the fire is gone, the fire is gone. And you know, for now, that's just how I feel about it. I just think that I would never want to perform like that again. Like, sure, I wasn't going to get finished. I had enough fight in me for that, but I wasn't there to win the fight, and that sucks. Like, I didn't show up. I know I could have done a lot better, but I just didn't. I couldn't pull it out of me, and that's a really bad feeling to have when you're in there and you just can't ignite the fire.
Yeah, I can pretty much relate 100%. I can relate. It's just that feeling of like, we know what we've been through. We know who we are as people. And I don't want to be the person that fought until they're, 42, 44, whatever it is. And now all of a sudden you're like Muhammad Ali, you're the guy that he could have given up a lot. He's already went down as a legend. Like, he could have stopped fighting years before that, and he didn't. He loved it too much, or he thought he still had it, or he thought he could still rekindle it. I think also too, just walking away at an earlier age, you're in a position now where your brain still works, your motor skills still work, and
kind of.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the internet and like computer stuff, we're both screwed. So, but I mean, no, I definitely understand what you're talking about. It's something that just we both know, and exactly what we're capable of, and when we don't perform to that level, it's sometimes best just to walk away. And I mean, I would imagine that's how you felt.
Yeah. It's not that I have nothing left. I think physically I'm probably the strongest that I've ever been. I feel really good physically, but it's so much more than that. It's, about having all the synergy between every part of yourself, your mental, emotional, and physical. And when one or more of those off, which for me, like mentally and emotionally, I was just exhausted. And, part of that had to do with the politics of the sport. Part of that had to do with relationship issues, life issues at the time. And part of that had to do with perhaps me just feeling like I had done enough. I had accomplished enough. And I've been competing in contact sports for about 15 years at the time. So, I had accomplished that world championship goal. And, I don't know. I guess maybe my calling was just something else. If I was still fighting right now, I may be tarnishing my legacy, continuing to fight for the UFC, and I wouldn't be here in Singapore. Yeah. So obviously when one door closes, another one opens, as a good old saying goes, right?
Yes, exactly. Do you feel that maybe winning the title and then right after you lost it, like, hey, I've already accomplished my goal of winning it, and that is what kind of took away some of the fire? Like you said, you had a hard time getting motivated. But you had a hard time getting motivated for the fights after that. Is it just felt like you did exactly what you came in to do. You won a title, the world title, and and then after that, did you want to go back through it all to get back up there again? Is that really kind of what it could have been?
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a part of it. I don't know if I looked at it at the time directly like that, but in hindsight now, it was probably a part of the total package when you're putting everything on a weigh scale, because I was never the UFC's golden girl. I mean, let's be honest, I never was. I never was going to get any kind of preferential treatment. I mean, it took me six fights and, to get back to a world championship, which I know that the guys have to do a lot more than that sometimes, but for the women, it's a shorter circuit to the top. Yeah. And it didn't matter that I've been fighting for a long time. It didn't matter that they had promised me, that rematch against Ronda, and then they kind of pulled the carpet out from under me. And I found out via social media and everybody texting me that I had been replaced by Holly. And, it's fine. It all worked out in the end, but being treated like that kind of sticks with you. And then you got to think like, all right, well, like how, what's the road to get back there anyway? If it was that hard from the beginning, I didn't really feel like anybody was on my side. Now I say anybody, I use that term loosely, but obviously my friends and family were, but as far as the UFC goes, nobody was really doing the extra things. They wanted Ronda back in that position. They didn't want me back in that position. And at the time, Ronda was still like she was still competing. So I just felt like that opportunity was bleak.
Yeah. So now that you're saying that you're there full time, living there, it's nice there. I mean, pretty much I think it's easy for like when I was there, it's easy. Everyone there speaks English, even though everyone speaks Chinese, but everyone there speaks English. When I was talking to some of the people that work there as far as employees go, they were like, you can't get a job unless you speak English, even though we all speak Chinese, but you can't get a job unless you speak English. So you found that it's easy. Has it been easy for the last week and a half or whatever to adapt to being there?
Yes, very much so. It's nice because, again, that's why I said it's the easiest to integrate here. There's no worry about language barrier or it's still a bit of a culture shock. I'm not going to lie. I've gotten lost on the transit a few times. And earlier today, I have this prepaid SIM card now, which is a weird concept to me. I think I'm definitely going to go with a plan, but it was just easy when I got off the plane to grab a SIM card and have it kind of working. Yeah. I ran out of data today when I needed to go somewhere. And I think I was even texting you, and I had to find Wi-Fi because I couldn't contact anybody anymore. Yeah. My data just ran out and I couldn't pay for my card because I didn't have internet. So that's just those learning curve things that I'm trying to adjust to. And when you go into the store, like the food's so different. A lot of times the grocery shopping is even a totally different experience. It's all new. It's a bit overwhelming, but in a really, really good way. I'm thrilled to be here and excited to be very far out of my comfort zone.
So you were talking about Evolve because you'll be doing some stuff there. What exactly are you going to be doing over there?
I'm going to be coaching a couple times a week. I actually have a seminar coming up, 2 of them, because the first one filled up so fast. Nice. So that's a good sign. So yeah. I'm doing this Saturday and Sunday. I think that'll be Friday, Saturday for you guys. And I'll be coaching 2 or 3 times a week, depending on my travel schedule and whatnot. But I coached my first class this last Saturday, and it was with the amateur, more amateur level. Yeah. Guys, some of the guys have never fought, and a couple are amateur level fighters, but it's a good introductory for me. And they already have their schedules. They all have amazing coaches, yeah. So I'm really nothing special here because the coaches are all world champions. They are all so credentialed and so amazing at what they do. The Muay Thai coaches are multiple world time champions in multiple different divisions, and they're just incredible. And then you have the BJJ guys that have black belt on top of black belt, they're red belt status. I mean, they're crazy. They're so good. And you have awesome. Olympic level wrestlers, and so I think what I have to offer is that I have a lot of experience in MMA, and I know how to put it together. Yeah, that they have a lot of individual coaches here that are specialized in their area, and they're phenomenal. But I hope that I can bring something to the table when you marry it all together for MMA. That the transitions, everything in between.
What other coaches do they have there that are specifically for MMA? Is Rich there? Is Rich Franklin there?
No, he doesn't really coach there right now. Believe it or not, some of the Evolve fighters actually step up and they'll coach different classes and things like that as well. But as far as an MMA coach, I know there's one here that I haven't met yet because he's been traveling with the fighters. So I actually don't recall his name. That's another thing that's difficult for me here is when the Asian names, they are so not only hard to pronounce, but they're really hard to remember. So I have to actually study. But I know there's a MMA coach here that does fight. To get back to you on that one, but he was gone in Indonesia cornering a fighter.
Yeah, some of the names are really long too, so not only are hard to pronounce, but they're extremely long. It's 3 names in
12
one.
12 syllables long.
It's true though. I mean, I remember
crazy.
I was doing the commentary and I would just call them by their first name because I didn't want to try to pronounce their last name.
That's what's going to end up happening for me. There's no way. Actually, that's a good question. What did you do? You just tried to call them by the easiest.
Yep. The worst part is you have to go, for me, I had to go in the cage and do the interview afterwards, and you have to say their full name. If they won the fight at the end, you have to say their full name. You can't just call them by their first name at the end when you do the interview. So you're oh yeah, and here's your winner, whatever, their last name, their first and last name is, you got to say that. So I'm doing the same.
Get it right?
Yeah, well, that or you're just praying that you're praying the guy that has the easier name wins. That's all I was doing. I do the same thing when I'm in Europe though. Right now with Bellator, I'm like, okay, so the guy's name that I can pronounce, I hope that guy wins. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's hard. Are they gonna have you doing the in-cage interviews?
They didn't say that I was going to. That's a good question. I should clarify that. Right now, I know I'm still getting settled, so I definitely have to kind of figure out what my schedule is going to be and what exactly the color commentary expectations will be. But I hope that I don't start out with that. I hope that they kind of let me ease in a little bit and just do the color commentary off camera. But we'll see. I guess if I have to, then I have to. And
Good luck with that.
Learn how to say these names.
They threw me to the wolves. They're like, hey, yep, you're gonna go in the cage now, right now. They were like, go now. I was like, oh, ran up there real quick, did the interview, ran back down. I was like, how was it?
Did
Well,
you know you're gonna have to do it?
though they said you may have to do it earlier in the night, but it was the first time I had worked for them. And then it's all obviously based. The in-cage interviews are based on whether the fight's good or not. And whoever won can speaks English speaks very well. That's the other thing. Sometimes like a lot of it for there's a lot of translators. So you're dealing with a translator,
Right.
then you're holding the mic to the fighter, then to the translator, then back to you. And so it gets a little confusing sometimes, but it's part of the game. I mean, but they did throw me under right there. They were like, okay, yeah, we're going to have you go up there now, this guy. And I was like, oh, great. What's this guy's name? I was like, how do you say it?
Yeah,
So,
somebody tell me how to pronounce his name.
yeah. I mean, but it's fun, though. Same thing's going on right now with me with Bellator over in the UK, making sure that you have to know everyone's name. You got to know how to say it properly. It's just, but it's fun. It's definitely a different part of something that you have to learn and have fun with. The only advice that I could give you is just make sure you do your research. That's it. Like, do your research on all the fighters a couple weeks before. That makes everything so much easier.
I could see that.
Yeah, because if you
I definitely have my work up to me.
yeah, because if what you do is when you're researching the fighters and you hear how the other commentators pronounce their name, and if it's a hard name, they'll actually talk about it. Like, no, he said he wants his name pronounced this way. So when you're watching their previous fights, you'll get a good idea of how they fight as well as like how the other commentators say their name.
Nice.
That's a little tidbit to help you, I guess, for me. And that's it helped me a lot when I was in the UK doing the UK stuff, even though a lot of them had easier names to pronounce, but we had a couple people from like Turkey and another one from like the Czech Republic. And I was like, shit, man, unfortunately I hope you lose, but it was like, it was one of those things. I was like, man. So
I like your background. Who picks those photos that are behind you?
oh, that was Sammy did it. My co-host. Normally he's here, but he couldn't make it tonight because he had plans with his wife. So he couldn't make it tonight. And Sunday night we were like, hey, Sunday night versus tomorrow at like 8:00 at night, because he works for the radio station. So he has to be up.
Okay.
But he has to be up at like 4 a.m. to get to the radio station by I want to say 5 or 4:45. So he's.
I know, I'm so difficult. I've changed this on you. Like I don't time on you.
It's hey, if it would have been someone else, we probably wouldn't have done with the hassle. I'm like, you know what? We'll figure it out maybe later on down the road. But we've been trying to get you on for a while, and we were talking for a bit about me doing your show. What's going on with your show as well?
Yeah, so I'm.
Uh-oh. I think we lost her for a sec. We'll have to cut into it.
Essentially.
I think I lost.
Did you lose me there for a second?
Yeah, I lost you for a split second. So what's going on with your show? What's going on with your show?
Basically, I'll be back on hopefully in May. That's what I'm hoping for. So, it's going to be early here. It'll be like 6 a.m. The show starts Thursday mornings, but that's still Wednesday from 3 to 5 Pacific time, 6 to 8 Eastern time for everybody stateside. So I'll just have to wake up early. But I really enjoy doing my SiriusXM radio show, so I want to keep doing it. And I plan to, at least finish out my contract through September, and then hopefully I'll still be able to continue to work on it.
How did all that? How did all that come about?
It came about with KHI Management when I was still signed with them. They helped me to get my SiriusXM radio show going up. I was doing a podcast for a little while.
Yeah.
And I was having a lot of fun with that, but the producing aspect of it was giving me a little bit of trouble. As we both mentioned, it was a little difficult because a lot of it was like self-done, at least as far as this push record. And then once it was done, I would send the audio and they would, fix it up for me. But if I even like messed up that, then we're not recording the show, right? And that actually happened to me a couple times too. So I just needed it to be all taken care of on the production side, and the radio show it's perfect for me. I love talking about MMA. I love talking about, the new things going on in the world, but I don't want to even be responsible to push record.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Sammy and I did a show and we had a great show and we forgot to push record. So we did 2-hour-long show. We forgot to turn on the processors.
And it happens.
It was such a pain.
Like that's not really that shouldn't be the job description. Like if you're the one that's like doing the interview, like it's just so much better to have somebody who's responsible for all the techie part of it.
Yeah.
And just make sure that it's all going good, because you can't really check it too once the show starts, or you look, it just looks weird. It sounds weird. Like, hold on, let me check my recorder, make sure it's going,
Yeah. That's why I have job security, Miesha.
That's producer Dave. He's got job security because he knows I'm not doing that. It's horrible. That's so funny. But you were talking about doing something new when you did the Sirius Radio thing. But then let's talk about with one. You guys have a ton more shows coming up. You guys are hitting some other countries. Talk to us about what's on the horizon for you guys at one.
Well, expansion. Mm-hmm. Really, that's what's on the horizon. One Championship is doing amazing things. I think it's somewhere over 45 million views for the last show. Called A New Era, that was in Japan, where Demetrius Johnson made his debut, Eddie Alvarez made his debut. That was a huge, incredible success, and definitely a big step in the right direction. Just showing that One Championship is doing it right. Yeah. So that was a big test run for One Championship, and everybody passed with flying colors. It was incredible. But expanding throughout Asia, and obviously we want to come to the U.S. market. We want to come to America and be able to offer just a different outlook on MMA, just a different outlook on martial arts, because there's the UFC, which they have their motto, but One Championship is a little bit different. It speaks to a little bit more of the purists and some people who might be turned off by the antics of the way that the UFC promotes it, and some people love the way that the UFC promotes, and they love the Conor McGregor trash talk, and they're totally drawn to it, which is great. But I think that there's some fans that have been lost in the translation of all that could appreciate the way that One Championship promotes their athletes and promotes their fighters. And so, right now it's the partnership with Turner Sports, TNT, and Bleacher Report Live is kind of the first initiative to get easy access to the States for people to watch the fights and to be able to watch them live. And hopefully within a couple years time, we'll be able to throw our first show stateside. That's definitely a goal for One Championship.
So I'm going to go back to the Eddie Alvarez. You brought up Eddie and with Demetrius Johnson, but what's your, because I try to explain to people that always listen to our podcast and talk to them, and not so much that I'm definitely not trying to be a hater, is that not all the best fighters, even now that I work for Bellator, not all the best fighters are in the UFC. And I've said that I don't know how many times, and I've said sure, not all the best fighters are going to be in Bellator, and not all the best fighters will be in in One Fighting Championships, because you see it. You saw when Eddie went there, and I'm a big Eddie Alvarez fan, but I mean, he had his hands full. And I remember calling that guy's fight, Timothy Nastyukin. He's got big power in his hands, man. I remember watching him knock out a couple guys, just devastating knockout power. And Demetrius had a tough first round in that fight, able to get the win, but I mean, he was in for a scrap, and for him, he's gonna have a tough road, because those guys, tons of small guys that are really talented in one. So, what was your reaction to that, and then also to the Eddie Alvarez fight? But then also on top of that, explain to people do you think that all the best fighters in the UFC? If not, explain to us why.
Well, I'll start with the Eddie Alvarez fight. I knew that he had a tough route in Timothy. as you mentioned, Timothy's very, very powerful, and perhaps not as well-rounded, quote unquote, but he has enough of a skill set to keep it where he's strong, and he doesn't have to land many punches. So he took Eddie out. I didn't expect that. Eddie's a really tough guy, and we know Eddie sometimes has to take some punishment to really kind of pull the dog out of him. Yeah. But obviously with Timothy, it wasn't a good idea. You can't take that kind of punishment from a guy like that. But it was eye-opening, I think, for fans to see that, one of the greatest from the UFC, I mean, he kind of got destroyed, and then Demetrius Johnson went out there, and like you said, I mean, he had a tough round. There were some takedowns that he didn't get, which is that's not common for Demetrius Johnson, so maybe you chalk it up a little bit, that this is a new promotion. There's a lot of new things going on for these guys. There's definitely some different, even the weight cutting and stuff like that is a totally different ballgame. They don't really weight cut here, but they have to make weight more than once.
Yeah.
So that was something that DJ said was actually kind of he used the term like it was kind of annoying. It was kind of a nuisance because I kept having to be on a certain weight, and granted I didn't have to cut, which he's like, I felt great not having to cut. It was way better, but monitoring like how much I was eating and what I was eating is kind of like was the new balance that he had to kind of figure out. So there was a lot of new for these guys, first times.
What do you mean by they don't? What do you mean by they don't have to cut? Explain to me like how they're doing it over there.
So their weigh-in system, they do it. Essentially, everybody fights 10 pounds up. So if you're a bantamweight, you weigh in at 135. Or excuse me, let's use flyweight because we're talking about Demetrius Johnson. So Demetrius Johnson's weight class is flyweight, but he weighs in at 135.
Okay.
So essentially, they eliminate the weight cutting process and they use a hydration testing to make sure that the athletes are not dehydrated. So they don't allow weight cutting.
But then they still kind of have to cut weight to get to 35, though, if they're bigger than that.
Well, yes, but they can't cut. They're not allowed to be dehydrated. They have to diet to that weight.
Got it. Okay.
So it eliminates the cutting process, the couple days before where we stop eating and stop drinking and go in the sauna and relentlessly dehydrate ourselves. It eliminates that process. So they have to actually pick a weight class that is manageable without dehydration.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah, so that was a first for both of them. So if you saw either of them looking a little softer than normal, that's probably why they didn't have to really cut down or get shredded for the weigh-ins and whatnot.
So do they do that the week of? So as soon as they land, they check their weight, and then they probably check them periodically throughout the week.
Yeah, basically, I'm not exactly sure how many times, but it's around 2 or 3 times that they check. I think they check when they come in, and then they do a weigh-in the day before. But I believe they also check the morning of the event, and you're not supposed to have like gained a massive amount of weight. So there's a different way that they kind of monitor it. They just want the fighters to avoid the whole weight cutting dehydration process. It's dangerous, and we all know it's unhealthy, but it's also being linked to a lot worse brain trauma. Like when you're dehydrated and potentially taking water off the brain, knockouts and concussions, and not just that, but the long-lasting effects are potentially much worse. So essentially, One Championships just eliminated the weight cutting process.
Do you think? And I'm gonna touch on TJ Dillashaw a little bit, not so much the EPO thing, but more of like the weight cut. And you saw the effects of how Henry was able to just barely like graze him a couple times, and it kind of rocked him. Do you think that had something to do with the drastic weight cut?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I felt like I was more easily rocked when I had difficult weight cuts, and it makes a big difference. Like the lights just go out faster. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but if you had really, really hard weight cut, it feels like you go out on your feet a lot easier. Even if you're still fighting, like you're not.
Yeah, I never really had to cut a whole lot of weight, so I never really had that issue, I don't think. So, I do recall I had one weight cut it was a little rough, and I just had a shitty performance, so the whole fight was shit. Not even just like getting hit or rocked, it was just a shitty fight. So, that was just one of those situations where the weight cut, I think, just I didn't diet the way I should have or eat the way I should have during camp, and the weight cut took way longer. I mean, normally it's the last 2 pounds that are hard. It was like the last 5. I mean, yeah, it was shit, man. But I understand what you're saying. So what's your take on to touch on TJ Dillashaw, but to touch on just the use of steroids, the use of performance enhancing drugs. I mean, is one talking about implementing some sort of stringent drug testing and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important, I know, for one championship to make sure that the athletes are clean. So drug testing is absolutely something that they're gonna implement, and throughout Asia, I'm not exactly sure how it works with the commissions and how the drug testing goes. I definitely have a lot to learn as far as how that is all run here, but I have talked to Chatri. Chatri believes that throughout Asia, it's not as prominent. Just the honor system is a little bit more important than maybe it is in other places of the world, and people generally would opt to fight clean, but that doesn't mean that everybody is, and it certainly doesn't mean that it is going to stop anybody. A good old honor system, if somebody wants to gain an advantage, I definitely think it's important to have the drug testing across the board. So I know that that's something that's I believe they already do some drug testing, but I think they want to get more thorough and just make sure that it's the follow through on that is clear. Something I was going to ask you, actually. Oh, I have not been keeping up with this at all, but have they released what TJ was
for EPO? For EPO.
EPO.
So, yeah,
okay.
EPO is an injectable, so there's no way it could have been a tainted supplement. And it's so funny that you brought this up. Is I actually had done the day after he relinquished his title, I said it's really, obviously, given the era of John Jones testing positive and fighting it to the bitter end, other people have been busted and they'll fight it to the bitter end. They'll deny it and they'll fight it all the way to the bitter end. But he just gave up his title with no questions asked. And so I said, I basically did a podcast the day after, and I just said there has to be something that was thoroughly thought out. And anyone that knows anything about EPO, it's such a dangerous drug. It can cause strokes, cause heart attacks, cause all these issues. And I said, so it was obviously something that was carefully planned out. So the only thing that I could really think of was EPO or blood doping, if he was having his blood removed and basically having it filtered out and basically putting in more red blood cells and blood doping it back in. So that's the only, like a cyclist would, to give himself better cardio. Those were the only two things that I could potentially come up with. And I talked about it afterwards. And even bjpen.com actually reposted the article talking about how I called it right after. And it just sucks because you actually hear like Cody is also had called him out a year or two before that, saying that, he's the EPO was getting to his head, how he doesn't remember telling people how to do steroids at Alpha Male and all these other things. So I felt there was kind of a question that needed to be asked, like, who is, because I know Bellator had talked about a little bit about potentially increasing their drug testing, but they're just trying to find a better solution besides USADA is what they're trying to do. USADA's tainted with all this weird stuff. People are just talking about how they seem like they're a little bit crooked, or just, Dana's in the ear and has a little bit more control than leading on to be, whatever it is.
What do you think about the drug testing? Like, do you think it was better before or after USADA?
Well, a couple things. I think that there is a way of doing it. I just don't know if USADA is the answer. I think there needs to be a separate third party who is not paid for by the UFC that takes away and relieves the UFC of all responsibility. And it's not that. The UFC is paying them to come in and do the job, which I think most people can appreciate. But the problem is that they work for the UFC. It's not like USADA is independently done. They're getting paid by the UFC to, for this. So I think if you find another company that can do it independently and expenses out of their pocket, and you basically say like, hey, anybody who you catch, we will pay you a bonus for that. So then they're actually out there trying to catch people for real. And Not that USADA's not trying to catch people for real, but it just seems a little weird that some of these guys, they're getting busted, and all of a sudden their results don't come back until a week or two after the fight, after the pay-per-views have been sold or after money's been made. Those are the things that really make me a little bit nervous about it, is why is it that all the big names are always getting busted after the fact, after the fight's been done? Because honestly,
I hate that.
Because you hear people all the time. Oh, we did the drug test and we took it on Monday, and here it is like 2 days later they're busted. Or if it's a low level name guy, they're getting busted like within 24, 36, 72 hours. Why is it like 2 weeks later after the fight's already happened that they had taken this sample 3 weeks before the fight and now it's coming back dirty 2 weeks after?
Yeah, after potentially their opponent was already damaged.
Yeah.
You know, beyond what should have been necessary. You know what I mean? It's if you're involved in a sport that is directly correlated with head trauma, you have to be on top of that kind of stuff. If you're going to do the drug testing, you need to know that the athlete's clean going into the bout, period. Like there shouldn't be, I don't know, there shouldn't be these tests coming out after the fact, like, oh, well, we tested them and they weren't clean for the fight, but the fight's already happened, so now they're going to get suspended and we're going to overturn these results. It's like, yeah, well, what about the person who had to fight a dirty guy or a dirty girl?
Now that you brought that up, let's talk about that, because TJ has 2 wins over Cody No Love, and he actually won the title back from Cody No Love after Cody beat Dominic Cruz. Now, they actually went back through. I don't know if the samples were from when he fought Cody, but it said didn't test positive for versus Cody. Anyways, so they went back through some of his old samples. That's why he got a 2-year suspension, that they had actually found EPO in some of his previous samples from some previous fights.
They did.
Yes. So my take on it is that now that they caught him and they went back through some of his old samples and tested directly for EPO, they were able to pull some of the old samples, and he tested positive for EPO in those samples as well. So he's been doing it for a while. Now, let's just, like you were talking about, like this person just got knocked out. Cody lost to him and got knocked out, not once, but twice. And I don't want to say that his next fight when he fought, who did he fight? Munoz?
Cody, yeah.
Yeah, Cody fought someone, what's his name? Mark? Not Mark. Marlon Munoz, or I think it's who he fought. Yeah, not Moraes. He fought someone else. That was not Marlon. I think it's Mark. Anyways, Pedro Munoz. So he fought Pedro. Okay. Pedro knocks him out as well. Now look, TJ didn't fight a smart fight. Or not TJ, but Cody didn't fight a smart fight. He comes out and says he didn't fight a smart fight. But who's to say that Cody's chin is maybe now questionable after 2 knockouts by TJ, who was blood doping or basically using performance enhancing drugs. I mean, you could have basically just ruined this guy. I completely agree. You ruined this guy's career.
So you know that like the old Marvel games where you would like fight each other and the lifeline would like go down and then it would like go back up and it would like go down. It's like you got to kind of think of a fighter in that way too. That injury line, that lifeline can be shortened by every knockout. I believe that it is. You see fighters that maybe like Anderson Silva, for instance, Chuck Liddell, guys that would fight with their hands down at their hips and had great head movement early on, but as they got a little bit older and then they started getting touched in the chin and like it just compiled and it happens pretty quickly once you start to get knocked out and you get knocked out again. And then it's like those 2 knockouts could have shortened and affected Cody's career tremendously. Yep. 2 big knockouts like that, he might have had a more sustainable chin against Pedro Munoz. Yep. Had he not been knocked out twice before.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no way to directly relate the 2 things. I mean, as far as we can it's all just speculation, but it just sucks because he lost the title to him. And I guess Jeff Nowitzki just came out and said that they tested TJ's for EPO during the Cody fights and they came back clean. But I mean, who's to say? I mean, here's the thing: is when you're doing steroids or using these drugs or performance enhancing drugs, PEDs, it's all the work that's done during camp or before, in between camps, that actually helps you get to the fight, that makes you better for the fight camp and for the fight. Like no one's just like, oh, I want the super drug, I'm going to shoot myself with steroids right before I walk out and I'm going to be strong and big. No, it's like stuff that you do for for months and sometimes years leading up to it, that it's an accumulation of getting better while you're on it the whole time, which makes you hit harder, makes you a little bit stronger, probably makes there's a lot of things that get involved with it. And I can see him potentially his career. No, I don't want to say Cody's done. I'm just saying that it definitely has affected his career. 3 losses in a row is hard to come back from. And like for me, I didn't have 3 losses in a row until I fought Gil and then Benson, or I fought Benson and then 2 other guys. It was just like that row. Your confidence is down and you never are the same. You loser.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. You know, so I mean, like, when your confidence is down as a fighter, what do you do?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the fighter, and it depends where they're at in their career. It's such an individual. It's an individual sport. It's an individual decision. So many people can that you should stop or retire. I mean, look at Michael Bisping. You know, it's like we have seen him go through those downs, and everybody else telling them that, you know, that, oh, he should retire, but really it's up to him. Like he can still fight if he wants to, and he will still fight if he wants to, you know.
But he's another example though of when TRT was going on, he fought Vitor Belfort, and now he has permanent eye damage because of that one fight. Now let's be real. Like I don't even know how he passed the eye exam test when he was able to fight afterwards.
Yeah.
But that's something that he fought someone who was on steroids, and it he now has permanent eye damage. So those are the long-term effects the rest of his life he's going to have to deal with, because someone he wasn't cheating at the time, but they should have never been allowing TRT or any of those things to be involved in the sport, especially like you said, where we're causing brain damage. We're hitting people in the head. We're not hitting a baseball. We're not rolling a ball. We're not hitting a golf ball or stopping.
We're not riding bikes.
Exactly. I mean, we're punching each other in the head and trying to hurt each other. So, yeah, I just wanted to get your take on that whole ordeal and see what you thought.
Man, it's crazy, and it's unfortunate. You know, it's TJ is a former teammate of mine, and I've always known that man has been highly competitive. I mean, to a point that most people would deem insane.
Yeah.
You know, I remember him just having huge tantrums and breakdowns where he's just like so pissed, and he's trying to kill the person standing, you know, across the way from him because that training partner got a punch on him or got what, you know. It's just like it's kind of ridiculous. But I mean, I don't know. You know, TJ comes off as a really good guy, and you know, I'm sure he is in some ways, but there's no excuse for cheating. You know, it's just he's really like tainted his own record. Like he already works hard enough. Like I don't think he needed any of that stuff, you know. And it's like for what? Like why? I don't know. I never understood it. I never will understand it. But I mean, it sucks. Like he's become his own worst enemy then.
I said the same thing about John Jones, Anderson Silva. I'm like, dude, you guys, like, why? I have no idea why. You guys obviously, I think just stylistically, you guys didn't need it. You guys were good on the feet. You had good takedown defense, pretty good off your backs. I mean, good jiu-jitsu. Like you didn't.
But isn't that crazy? You know that some of the greatest are tainted for using. It's like maybe that is what separated them. You know, we look at them and we're like, yeah, you know, you're so great, you don't need it. But maybe if they were on a level playing field, maybe someone else would have been like just as good or competitive. Like maybe they wouldn't have had like such. Maybe TJ wouldn't have been a champion. You know, maybe he wouldn't have knocked out Cody twice. Like maybe John Jones, you know, like maybe he wouldn't have got that head kick in that fight. You know, I don't know. Like this. Supplements have affected them, you know?
Yeah, I've said this, like, you know, I feel like PEDs, what they do is you take a fighter who maybe is not as mentally strong, and it gives them all of a sudden when they take that shot or they use PEDs, that it gives them the confidence to make them feel like they are unstoppable. So that they can go a little bit harder. They can push themselves a little bit further. And I've always said that usually these are people that have a hard time with their confidence levels that are taking it. They want to feel like they have the edge. They want to feel confident enough to get to that next level, which is crazy because someone like John Jones, his two brothers play in the NFL. He's one of the best fighters to ever step in the octagon, but it's just weird that he's tested positive. Anderson Silva, I mean, to me, he's already tainted. Like, there's no way you can put him in the GOAT conversation because you don't know how long he's been cheating. You know, so, I mean, as far as GOAT conversations, if you have a Mount Rushmore, I'm going to ask you this question. Your Mount Rushmore, who's in your Mount Rushmore?
Look, this is where it gets really dicey because there was a time when cheating wasn't monitored. So how do I go back and say, you know, someone like Shogun or Vitor or, you know, those guys back, we'll even go back as far as Pride, you know, some of the guys that fought in that, like, we know that almost all those guys were. So you want to have the greatest of all time. Like, there was a time when it was not only not illegal, but it was like, that's what you do.
Yeah.
So how do you go into the new era of USADA where it's not supposed to be, but like, are those guys still a part of the conversation then? Because it's not like they were doing something wrong, but it's also not like they were on the same, I don't know, man, that's hard. That's a really difficult one. That's where I always get tied up in the GOAT conversation because I don't know how to factor that in. I don't know how to factor the guys pre-USADA, and you know, now we have USADA here. It's like, I don't know, it's different because a lot of those guys would have tested and they would have sure as shit fought a lot different than they did if they weren't on all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I mean, like, I look at certain guys and I look at their body type. You know, some guys pass the look test, some guys pass the smell test type thing, you know? And for me, I put guys like, maybe Fedor was on something, but we never know. But I mean, like, he never had the body that showed that that's how he was. So I put Fedor on that list. But even though he fought a lot in Pride, he fought in other organizations and stuff, but I put him on the list. And then I put BJ Penn because I know BJ is just not about that life. You know, BJ.
Yeah. For me, though, I mean, I don't know if George St. Pierre ever did. He doesn't seem like his character would, but he's just always been one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So I have the three of them. I have GSP as being the top right now because he's never tested positive. He's a two division champion. And I mean, like, to me, he's always held himself with respect and showed, and someone you would want your kids to like kind of look up to as far as being a role model for a combative sport. BJ Penn is, for me, probably second on the list, or Fedor. You know, those three are interchangeable any way you want. And then beyond that, I haven't really thought beyond that of who else would be on that list. I would say probably Jose Aldo somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah. You know, a big iconic figure for me too was Randy Couture. Like, he was my original favorite when I first started watching, and also a part of the reason why I went to Extreme Couture. Like, I just think he's such a good, kind-hearted person, a good role model. Came from that wrestling background, kind of speaks to my heart. He's somebody that I definitely could be up there.
See, I definitely agree with you 100%. I think he was one of the first guys to be a two division champion, though. That's why he was heavyweight champ, and then he was the light heavyweight champ. So when I start putting this into categories, I start thinking of guys that were two division champions. BJ Penn was a lightweight and then a welterweight. He beat Matt Hughes for the welterweight title first, came back and won the lightweight title. So they were doing that before it was even popular.
Forrest Griffin.
Yeah, Forrest as well. You know, I mean, like, Forrest is in that mix. I mean, for me, I have a little bit harder time to put with Forrest there, but Forrest is definitely an icon of the sport, though. I mean, he's the reason why it got to that next level, him and Stephan Bonner. But I mean, I pretty much say more Forrest because Forrest still carries himself with, you know, respect and dignity throughout the sport and ever since he ever, you know, fought. He's such a fucking hard worker, that guy. I love watching. I trained with him a couple of times at AK, and he doesn't like to be coached. He fucking hates it. But, you know, we tried coaching him a couple of times while he was sparring at AK, and he's like, hey, can you guys just shut the fuck up while I'm sparring, please? And we all just started cracking up. We're like, sure, no problem, man, no problem. You got to love guys like that. Just speak their mind, but they're 100% real, and you got to respect that.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm trying to fight here.
Yeah.
You're distracting me.
Yeah, exactly. True. I can totally see him do that. Fuck, I remember he won the Ultimate Fighter. He drove that fucking little Scion around forever until the wheels fell off. I talked to him like years after, and he's like, yeah, man, I still got it. It's all beat up and fucked up and barely gets around, but yeah, I still got it.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I love that. That's the kind of character I can wrap my head around that. That's awesome.
So now back to one. When are you working your first show?
I don't have a date set yet, but I'm hoping for May.
Okay. And then where's your guys' next show, and when are you guys going to be in Singapore soon? Are you guys going to be Kuala Lumpur, Manila? Where are you guys going to be at?
Everywhere. We have an event coming up in literally everywhere. It's crazy because they're expanding so quickly. But we have an event coming up in, I think it's June in Singapore, and man, there's so many shows coming up. It's crazy. Like there's the way that they're expanding and starting to do more than one show a weekend even.
Yeah.
So it gets pretty crazy. But I mean, if anybody does want to check it out and verify like exactly when shows are coming up, you just go on either the One Championship app is really user friendly and it's free, and the Bleacher Report Live app is also easy and free to use. So those are two really easy ways to keep up with, what's going on with One Championship.
Awesome. I'll just text you and find out. I'll be like, hey, what's up? Hey,
same stateside. I'm like, well, what's going on with TJ? I don't even know. It's like terrible. I know it's my job to know, but I've been like highly distracted with everything going on over here. So it's been pretty crazy for me.
Did you watch the fights last night?
I watched some of them. I didn't get to watch the last fight, but I watched Kelvin Gastelum and Israel Adesanya. Was a great fight.
Yeah, good fights. All right, well, hey, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you have other things you got to do. Second week on the job, making sure you're keeping up with what you're doing. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And I'm going to send you over the link and everything. If you can share it, that'd be great. And it's great to see that smile, girl.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. And sorry if the Wi-Fi's been a bit spotty here.
I know
good. Sometimes the connection isn't the greatest, but I did my best to be there for you.
I wish you the most of luck, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
How we going? Bye.
Bye.